Yep, I think I'm on. Okay, folks, this is a quick post talking about how we give ourselves a voice on the world stage as people of African origin. I call them hashtag PAOs. And why I'm talking about this today is that it's quite clear that the world is moving to a new level of development. Post-COVID in particular, it's very apparent that a lot of the rules around media, censorship, medical autonomy, artificial intelligence, transhumanization, complete with all the rest of the stuff about the alphabet communities and how we present as human beings, all of these things are in a huge state of flux. Of course, they have also had massive political and economic impacts. And if we're not careful, people of African origin are going to be at the back of the queue when we're deciding the kind of world we want in the future. So I just wanted to share a couple of my insights into how we can leverage our voices, how we can raise our voices. And I'm going to talk about four things. First of all, I'm going to talk about stereotypes. I'm going to talk about self-validation. I'm going to talk about people speaking their truth. And I'm going to talk about the way you, if you're a person of African origin, also if you're a person of European origin, how you relate to the content that's shared by folk like myself, who is an unashamed and unabashed person of African origin. What about stereotypes, first of all? Okay. So there are social stereotypes in the world created mostly by the dominance in the last 500-600 years of the Western European-based societies. It's their turn. The Romans had their time, the Greeks had their time, the Kemetic people, the Egyptians had their time, the Malians had their time. Everybody has had their season. This is the season of people of Western European origin. And the stereotype has been put abroad that theirs is the voice of authority, command, control, such that they expect everybody to listen to their will, their intent, their pontification, their insights, and actually they don't bother listening to anybody else because they think that the world was created in their image and it is their right to rule it. Now, one of the impacts of this, for me, and I see this everywhere, I see it professionally, I see this in religious organizations and so on, is that often what is presented as being respected is not at all. It's actually being patronized. So, owing to these stereotypes, even when you get people of African origin, like Oprah Winfrey, rock star, worth billions of dollars, latterly Trevor Noah, who's gone from RSA, South Africa, gone to America and is absolutely killing it on the airwaves, right here in the United Kingdom. I mean, we've had some extraordinary talents. Lenny Henry was a past favourite, though I'm not sure about his social and political position on medical autonomy. And there have been many others. I know black people with enormous talent. We've got a Ghanaian, actually, Kwesi Kwarteng, who, by all accounts, is one of the sharpest tools in the whole of Westminster. I think he's got a bachelor's from Oxford and a master's from Cambridge, and he's low-key working on his PhD at the moment. So, this guy's no slouch. He's no, he's no remedial case. So we have people of enormous talent. This afternoon, I listened to a speech by Ambassador Dr. Eccles Spio-Gabra, who, oh my goodness, if anybody knows where the bodies are buried with the international financial architecture, it's him. He worked over there in DC. He was an ambassador and so on. So we have people who know what they're talking about. But yet they still fall victim of the fundamental stereotype that if you're a person of African origin, they don't really listen to you. At the best, they will patronize you. I know lots of people who say, oh my God, Ted, you're so articulate. What they lack, what they omit to say is, for a black man. But hey-ho, we all learn how to speak in the early parts of our lives, and it's not going to change. Now, so that's the first thing, stereotype. Second thing, and this is the most important part of my post, I would argue, is that this is purely my experience, this is purely my own insight. It is so important to self-validate yourself. Do you know what? If you depend on the validation of your brother, your sister, your family, your extended family, your neighbors, society, different ethnic groups, authority figures, you are completely and utterly screwed. Why? Because they will always play the tune and you will always dance to the piper's tune. When you make the mental shift to say, now I validate myself, everything changes. Didn't read that in a book, folks. I'm telling you how my life has gone. Now, the reason it's easy to not self-validate is that there's a voice in your head which is telling you, ooh, if you do this, so-and-so is going to think X, Y, and Z about you. It's not very desirable. If you don't do that, you won't be accepted by such and such. And you know, these voices are very, very compelling. And we think the voices are our voices. Let me introduce you to something called archons, even demonic entities. They are so clever at getting into your mind, and they are fed and implanted by our upbringing, by the media, and so on and so forth. You think it's you who's thinking that. Imagine my sense of liberation the day I discovered that actually, Dede, it's not you who's thinking that at all. It's society, people outside who are thinking that and presenting it in your head as your thoughts. So actually, you're basing your life on a falsehood. If you think those voices are yours, they are not. So the key about self-validation is that it opens the road for you to do, for the first time, not what is popular, not what is fashionable, not what looks good, but what is good. Looking good, being good, they're connected, but they're very different things. Okay? So we need self-validation to give ourselves a voice. Thirdly, talking about speaking your truth. You know, a lot of people get nervous when others say, look, you've got to speak your truth and so on and so forth. That's because they imagine you're going to come across like an axe-wielding murderer, you know? The flip side of speaking your truth, the flip side of your truth is that life is the greatest treasure in the universe. You cannot say that you are speaking the truth if by your actions, thoughts, and words, you are diminishing other people. So the first prime directive is first do no harm. But the thing is, doctors have got that in play. You wouldn't believe it, though, in the way some of them have behaved in the last, 2 years or so of the pandemic. But hey-ho, the truth is that if you speak from your truth instantly acknowledges and understands that you are part of the universe. You are a part of the one source, the great creator, himself, herself, itself, whatever it is. Okay? So you cannot say that you're speaking the truth if, as a corollary to that truth, it means you're setting up a social hierarchy with somebody at the top, somebody being beasted at the bottom, whether it's men and women, adults or children, people of different ethnic groups or whatever. So speaking your truth has with it the absolute definition that you're going to have to respect life. Now, from that point, there are so many things that come in. Okay, I try and broadcast sometimes in Panty, sometimes in Ga. I'm hugely nervous because actually when I'm off camera and I speak Ga and Panty, I think most people would probably be quite impressed because I was well taught by the people who speak these languages. And but because I present and work in English, it's much easier for me to kind of feel confident sitting in front of a camera, wittering on in English. That is not so for everybody. You know, one of the things I loved about Spio Gabler's presentation this afternoon, I thought to myself, damn, this man speaks West African English. Same accent and everything. And look, he's held the highest offices that most Ghanaians are ever likely to hold. Wonder if he's got the Order of the Volta, who said it's probably likely overdue. But, by the way, that's a gong in my native country. So the point is this. When you self-validate, you don't have to try and present as an Englishman, a Frenchman, a German, an Asian, an American. You don't have to fake any of those silly accents. Because actually, as you're doing that, you are instantly taking away from your credibility. You need to present in your truth as yourself and do not be ashamed. This is, what can I say? I didn't read that in a book. I'm sharing with you the experience I have bought with some really difficult situations, and I know them to be absolutely gospel truths which you can take to the bank and use that as collateral for borrowing stuff. So, finally, if we're going to have a voice in the future, we need to get ourselves off those stereotypes that were shared, that because Oprah is validated by white folk, she must be saying something correct. It's rubbish. Utter nonsense. It's just a stereotype of the hegemony of the social currency of Western European ethnicity. It is total and utter nonsense. I don't know any societies that are capable of having paroxysms of murder and killing like World War I and World War II. Those societies were basically killing each other like, I mean, you wouldn't treat cockroaches the way some of the people were treated, say, at the Battle of Bastogne or Arnhem or the Somme or Verdun or in the First World War. My goodness, nearly forgot it. The Russian front, which is why the Russians don't call it the Second World War. They call it the Great Patriotic War, because it was a war of annihilation waged by Adolf Hitler, because in his book, Slavs were second-class citizens. Then ultimately, the Big Bang, Hiroshima, Nagasaki. So please, don't just jump to these lazy stereotypes that, unless it's got the stamp of Western Europeanization, Western European approval, it's not valid. That's a falsehood. So, the point I was going to make was that it is important for people of African origin to like and share their own content. You know, when you go on YouTube, I'm shadow banned. It doesn't just happen on YouTube, it happens on Facebook. The only place I'm not shadow banned is actually on Telegram. But, you know, let's call, what was I going to say? Let's call a spade a spade. It is what it is. But even then, your intent as the person who is taking on my communications has a huge impact on the outcomes. If you're trained to like posts by Trevor Noah because Trevor Noah is approved by the quote-unquote mainstream, okay, everything Trevor Noah does is fed up to you and I as the first alternative possibility. if you're liking the stuff that, well, okay, let me use myself as an example, the stuff that I share, and if you share the stuff that I do, that which you can believe in or agree with, of course, don't share it if it jars with you. But when you share the stuff, what you do is that you make that stuff more visible. What that does is that it makes voices like that more powerful. And what that does is that it gives you a voice at the table, so that nobody's coming along and patting you on the head and patronizing the living daylights out of you and pretending they're calling that respect. Because people do that all the time to people of African origin. And right afterwards, in my opinion, they lie about it. Other people say it's unconscious. I don't believe in that unconscious guff at all, because 9 out of 10 people I know have got the social smarts to realize when what they're doing is wrong. So there we have it, how we give ourselves a voice. Please like, please share, please comment on this. What it does is that it gives anybody the idea that they might like to shadow ban me, that they're going against the grain. And because I'm speaking for your rights, you're giving yourself a voice. Thank you so much for listening, and have a fantastic rest of the week. All the best.